Warning, we are not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Geoff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derrick.
And you are listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is now sponsored by Morwa P. LLC.
Hey guys, so this week we're going to be doing Season 10, Episode 10 of King of the Hill, Hank Fixes Everything. In this episode, Buck Strickland of Strickland Propane initiates a propane price war with his rival companies. To boost sales, Buck hires the cast of the reality show American Chopper to perform at the Propane Expo. However, their antics lead to a riot. Concerned about the escalating competition and declining profits, Hank arranges a meeting with the competing propane companies. Unfortunately, this gathering results in an illegal price-fixing agreement, leading to legal consequences for all involved. And this week we're going to start off, I guess, with the contract dispute between Strickland Propane and the cast of American Chopper.
Get your heads out of the oven, folks. I hired those fellas from the American Chopper Show to make an appearance at the expo.
I love those guys! The way they fight and build motorcycles!
Yeah. Well, right now, they in Dallas building a bike for some billionaire computer geek, but I convinced them to make a little detour to Arlen. You take that, you son of a bitch! I got myself some basic cable TV stars.
Huh. I would have thought big-name guests like that would charge an awfully steep appearance fee.
Well, that depends on where $20,000 sits on your steepness radar.
20,000? Sir, I'm not sure this is the best use of our limited financial resources.
Well, I am. From now on, whenever people watch American Chopper, they'll think Strickland Propane.
So we don't know the terms of the contract, other than the fact that it's supposed to be $20,000 for, and this is really a moment in time of the early 2000s when American Chopper was super relevant.
Sure. Were these the actual people? I've never seen American Chopper.
Okay, so a funny thing about King of the Hill is there's a shocking number of guest stars, and I'm only realizing it now as I rewatch it. Some of the earlier episodes, they're not as blatant with, with who the guest stars are. So like Brad Pitt is in an episode, but he's just somebody's brother. In this episode, they named the guest stars, the Tuttles from American Chopper.
That actually brings up a question. It says, literally, I have not watched a King of the Hill episode in 10 years.
Yep.
And these are the two I've now watched. Geoff, What is your King of the Hill history?
I watched it when it was first on. I didn't watch every single episode, but I watched some of them. And I always kind of liked it, but was never super into it. And then recently, me and my girlfriend started rewatching it, and we've made it through most of the show so far. They're about to bring it back, so that's why we were watching.
And for the listener, I was asking Geoff, and Mike answered, which is awesome. So we're.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought you were asking Mike. Okay.
So it doesn't matter what I say.
Well, for my part, I have never seen the show. Mike Judge. This is a Mike Judge show, right? Yeah.
Yep. This is what he did after Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, he's very much a mixed bag for me. I very much enjoyed Office Space. I enjoyed Daria. I hated Beavis and Butthead. I could not sit through a single episode of that show.
I'm with you there.
I've never seen, until yesterday, I have never seen an episode of King of the Hill.
Have you seen Idiocracy?
I have seen Idiocracy, yes.
Interested to know your thoughts on that.
It was an entertaining watch. I haven't seen it since 2005.
I feel like the
shortly
internet
after
likes
it
it
came
way
out.
more than I do.
Yeah, that's the sense I get as well. I mean, it has its funny moments, but
yeah, there are parts of this show that I really enjoy, and I like that King of the Hill has no bad episodes. Like the worst episode is like, that was still fine. But I guess jumping back into the topic, so we don't know the terms of the contract other than they were supposed to perform. They were promised $20,000. We don't really know who controls the expo itself. So it makes it a little bit hard to evaluate the contract dispute just because, maybe they were supposed to do certain things for their performance. Maybe they were supposed to bring a motorcycle with them, or maybe they were just supposed to appear. Either way, they're demanding their money.
Doesn't one of them say, like, yeah, we were going to bring this bike, but it wasn't ready?
Hey, any of you fellas bring a chopper? A helmet? Something?
I wanted to bring the NASCAR bike, but these chuckleheads didn't finish it.
Maybe I could have finished it if you would have stopped asking every 5 minutes when I was going to finish it.
Okay, numbnut. I'm starting to get aggravated here.
Yeah, they say that, but also it's not specified that it was in the contract.
Well, and also, I think that's sort of a kind of them making fun of American Chopper because that happens all the time on the show.
Yeah, that was the point of the show. We have to make the deadline because they're throwing the chair at my face.
And they never do. Well, I mean, they do, but sometimes one of the guys is just a disaster and does not succeed in doing what he's supposed to do.
Are these the guys from the meme with the chair throwing?
Yes, that's the meme.
Where it'll be like a guy arguing with... Okay.
Yep. Yes, the guys.
I'm showing my
like
pop culture
are the guys
lack of
from the
awareness, or ignorance.
I'm enjoying this because sometimes you're hyper aware of pop culture things, and sometimes you're completely blind.
No, the reality TV show stuff, I can't.
This was the transition of Discovery Channel from being like Discovery Channel to reality TV channel,
Right.
But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have enough terms to really evaluate what the breach in the contract would be or who would be at fault. You know, if it included terms that they had to bring the motorcycle or do something on a motorcycle and they didn't show up with it, well, then they'd be in breach. If it didn't, then they wouldn't. And then Strickland would be more liable. Eventually they work it out on their own, which is frankly is how most of these disputes end up working out, is the parties somehow settle. In this case, I don't know if the Tuttles are aware that they're helping commit a crime, but they're just making a lot of noise.
I mean, they showed up to apologize, and
Yeah.
it seemed like they weren't planning on getting anything in return for it. Yeah.
I would also, by the way, just to throw it out there, though.
Wait, hang on. I think we won't drop a clip here because it would just be motorcycle sounds for like a minute and a half.
Which, of course,
You can imagine yourself.
Which, of course, means we're going to drop a clip, and it's just going to be motorcycle signs.
I'm not dropping a clip.
All right, so I'm going to have to get a motorcycle sound that has nothing to do with the show and just drop it in on my own accord. So that's what we're working with.
Just Derrick making.
This is the first time, for the record, listener, this is the first time Geoff has just actively said I'm not doing something for purposes of the show.
I'm not going to pull, I don't care how long, of just motorcycle sounds. That's silly.
I stand by my
All right,
statement.
Derrick, what were you saying?
I stand by my statement. Well, one thing to note is that, and I'm not saying I do a lot of contracts for like quote unquote celebrities. It is almost a scenario where they pay a good chunk of it beforehand, and then there's a sort of back end second payment. They never do anything for $0 before they show up.
That seems like a more rational way of doing things. You know, even if it's half up front or something, or some deposit amount.
Right. In the real world, that's how it works. Sometimes it's even put in escrow and then released afterwards. So I think, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. There could be about 13 breaches of a agreement, but of course we know nothing about the agreement.
There's a million things that could be breach of contract here. We just don't have any of the terms.
Right.
So unfortunately, it kind of limits what we can discuss with this.
Right.
I mean, I think it is safe to say they agreed to talk for half an hour. That seems to be apparent from the dialogue. So what they were going to do for half an hour without a bike or...
Yeah, did they say... Yeah, did they say... I don't remember. Did they say half an hour?
Yeah.
He says, for 30 minutes. Yeah. What are you going to do for 30 minutes or something like that?
Sir, what exactly are they going to do for the next half hour?
I don't really know. I'm not a fine print kind of guy.
And also there's the possibility of like a third party, a third party interference with the contract or a force majeure issue where like there's a literal riot breaking out. We cannot perform the contract, or are they still at fault then?
Yeah.
The force majeure is fun. I mean, I don't think we've actually talked about that on the podcast before. So, I mean...
A brief example to the listener might be like COVID breaking out, meaning that something like, the French Open can't happen. And unless you have insurance to cover it, who's at fault there?
Do we really want to use COVID as an example? Because...
the French Open famously had insurance for it.
Well, also because literally force majeure clauses sometimes did not include COVID, and that it became a whole thing. I have noticed all of the force majeure clauses that I get proposed now have, epidemics, things along that nature in it.
Right. Government restrictions or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I said the French Open is famously they were like the one large event that had pandemic insurance.
Right.
Interesting.
So they were like,
Right.
oh yeah, we got a year's worth of funding covered.
Yeah. Yeah. But
But yeah, it would be if a tidal wave hit and wiped away the stadium, do you still have to put on the game?
right. Yeah.
Is it a way out of a contract? The building burned down. Do I still have to provide housing for my tenants?
It can be referred to as an act of God clause, although it's much broader than that.
Yeah.
Sometimes act of God is actually one of the examples within a force majeure clause. But anyway,
Which Geoff must be furious at.
I mean, it's a term of art at this point. Whatever.
It's a literal God being like, God.
if we can't prove that it is a literal God, it is not force majeure.
That's right.
There we go.
So, since we're talking about a riot, Hank gets on the phone with the Chopper folks when they are saying, "Hey, we want our $20,000 speaker fee."
You're breathing pretty heavy, sir. I'll handle this.
Could you keep it short, Hank? I got a job interview on the other line.
This is Hank Hill, assistant manager, and we are not going to pay you for inciting a riot.
You stupid idiot.
Oh, God.
No time to pray. We got to turn things up a notch. I'm going to put on some cologne and renew my acquaintance with Jerry Sandoval's wife. That'll show him we mean business.
And I'll point out, that I can see speaker contracts where there's like morals clauses and things like that, where if you go up there and start, pulling an Elon Musk Nazi salute thing, hey, we're not going to pay you. Sorry, you ruined our event. So that makes total sense. But they didn't incite a riot. A riot happened because of them being there, but it was sort of a Paul's Graph's case kind of sequence of events where somebody throws a hat and then there's a fight over the hat and then someone else gets bumped by one of the people fighting over a hat, and that turns into like a snowball effect that results in a riot. And just so the audience is aware, the Paul's Graph case is I think we've mentioned it before in the podcast, but who's to say whether it's the current run or a prior run. But that was a case where a Rube Goldberg chain of events led to a woman having a scale, an old timey plates balancing on the end of a fulcrum type of scale falling on her as the result of an explosion caused by fireworks that were in a guy's backpack. And she was in a little shop on a train platform. He was at the other end of the platform being shoved into an overcrowded train by a train conductor. And his backpack or pack of whatever fell down to the tracks, and it had fireworks in it and exploded. The reverberations caused the scales to fall on Miss Paul's Graph and injure her. And either the train conductor or the guy with the fireworks was held to not be responsible for her injuries because that was an unforeseeable chain of events. So that's, and here again, you have the Chopper folks, being not great public speakers and getting the crowd displeased with them, which through a chain of events results in fights and one of them trying to do a stage dive onto what is not a crowd that, even if they were trying to hold him up, would have whatever.
It was more the crowd being upset at the performance, but not because the performance was upsetting. It just wasn't very good.
Right. It was an unruly crowd, and
as propane expos normally are.
Right. And what happened does seem to have been a riot. I'll point to the Texas Penal Code, section 42.02, that says a riot is an assemblage of 7 or more persons resulting in conduct which, among other things, conduct which creates an immediate danger of damage to property or injury to persons. This had 7 or more people, and there was clearly danger of injury to persons and probably some property, but at least danger to persons.
Hey, let go of the hat!
It bounced off my face!
Hey, Fruitcake, that's my boy's hat. Don't make me come down there and use the size 12 on your face.
Would you join me in the singing of our national anthem?
There are some other situations that can qualify as a riot, but we don't need to go into them here. So, I mean, a riot did happen because they didn't give their, they did not live up to their end of this bargain, I think we can say.
So Geoff, just to confirm, you can't incite a riot by just sucking at providing your services and or whatever.
That's correct. And actually, what's funny is Texas law says that a person only violates the statute if they commit the offense by knowingly participating in the riot. So if you and the prior version of the statute was invalidated under the free speech clause because the free speech clause of the First Amendment, because it was so vague that you couldn't, like, if something you said happened to result in violence. In fact, the statute used to say that it was about incitement of a riot and like causes of action that you could have as a result, and didn't then talk about a riot.
So let's say instead of it being American Chopper, there's just some politician there, and he's giving a really fired up speech about going down to the Capitol, and it'll be wild, and they're trying to steal the election from you. But he doesn't go and participate in the actual violent riot afterwards. He wouldn't be responsible for inciting a riot there.
Well, I should say this statute is about participation in a riot. It is not about inciting a riot. So that in and of itself is a distinct issue. And I was not able to find anything pertaining to potentially inciting a riot within Texas law. But that doesn't mean it's not there. I am not a Texas attorney. I went to high school in Texas, but that was the end of it.
See, how did you not watch this show then? It was going on while you were in high school.
Because I don't think it was. I graduated in 2001.
This show was airing before 2001.
Well, I didn't watch it. I got enough of Texas while I was there, and that was Austin, so it was very mild Texas.
Yeah, King of the Hill aired 1997 to 2009.
Okay. So yeah, my entire run through high school, I was not watching the show.
I mean, it sounds like your entire life you weren't watching this show. No.
Well, right.
Yeah, really.
There was 3.5 years in there where I was living in Texas.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah. In Arlen, Texas.
Let me actually talk about mine first, because I think mine makes a little bit more sense, and then we can talk about the wearing of the wire, which is a sort of secondary task. Yeah, so let me jump into sort of what I think is the plot A of, or at least one of the main parts of.
It is. We haven't actually mentioned plot B.
Plot B is so dumb. I can't help it. I really can't. And
it's them waiting in line for tickets.
All right. So just to give some background, plot B is Luann and Lucky waiting in line to get tickets. Do you guys know who voiced Luann and Lucky?
Lucky sounded familiar, but I have no idea.
It's Tom Petty and Brittany Murphy.
Interesting.
Huh. Okay.
Brittany Murphy's on the entire run of the show. Tom Petty joins for like the last 3 seasons. Yeah.
Interesting.
And they eventually get married. Spoiler alert for an upcoming episode of this show down the road.
But yeah, Tom Petty is a sort of a cousin Oliver in the show, where he just kind of shows up and becomes a major character.
Cousin Oliver?
it's a TV trope from the Brady Bunch. Cousin Oliver shows up and is just now a major focus of the show in the last couple seasons.
Well, it's not a podcast episode unless Mike has somehow a more random reference than what we're already talking about. Although I will note in a relatively recent episode, Geoff was the one that gave the random reference, which I was very impressed by. And I'm not going to remember what the reference was because, again, I never get your references. I just remember you did one, and even Mike commented that your reference was so random that, like, and I was...
I will say the Cousin Oliver thing is like a famous TV trope. It's when they introduce like, and now we're having a baby, and it's a whole show about a baby now.
I mean,
I'm aware of jumping the shark.
You are the right. You are the trope guy, Mike. That is your thing, and we do need to do a sidebar on it. So that is a reminder. But anyway, so what we'll call the A plot of this episode is basically Hank, whether he meant to or not, it doesn't sound like he meant to, effectively starting a cartel, which is awesome. I love everything about this, especially as a guy who spent 2 years at his big firm doing antitrust work. So
there you go.
I'm back. There's a common trend of Hank Hill having great reverence for all things propane and just trying to solve everything with like, all shucks, goodwill. And it not quite
because these people are.
I can see that
because the business owners are idiots.
Idiots, and also Strickland, who Hank idolizes, is like just sleazy as hell and just a great character.
He's a good character. I will say, just in the couple episodes I've watched, he's a very good character. But so the very quick story about what happened is basically most of the episode is effectively a price war where each of the what we think is 2 at first, and magically there becomes 4. Propane sellers that continue to just go down in prices and overmatch each other to a point where it's clear none of them are making money and they're just trying to outdo the other one. Like to an absolutely ridiculous point, since we start the episode off with 40% on one side of the street and 50% off on the other side of the street. And then it becomes like a buy 2 for like, get 2 for 1, then 3 for 1, and it just keeps getting ridiculous, which I don't think you make money off of propane doing that, for the record.
So I totally forgot about this, but my first job, which was in Texas, it was at a grocery store, and in front of the grocery store was a gas station, and across the street was a separate gas station, and they got into a bit of a like undercutting price war between each other, these 2 gas stations. And it was funny coming into work just to see the prices keep, dropping. Like then one day this place would have the cheaper gas, and the next day it would be the place across the street. So
there's the great line in this episode where Hank's saying to one of the coworkers, like, Strickland's going to come up to you and ask for a 3, and it's our job to say we don't know where it is.
A 4.
A 4, because he'd already moved to 3. Yeah.
Datherton's doing it again, Hank. He's up to 3 for 1.
Now, when Mr. Strickland comes back, he's going to want the 4. It's our job to say we can't find it.
You know who was a really good liar? Joe Jack.
He'll be okay. I got him a job at the Propane Expo this weekend.
And I will say, just because this is kind of funny, the grocery store I worked at was called H-E-B, which is a big chain in Texas. And it's short for Howard E. Butts was the founder.
I love it.
So
I love it.
Yeah, I don't think Butts Grocery would have lasted very long.
So, some people have good branding,
Yeah.
Well, and actually, that sort of does remind me that when I was growing up, I grew up in Utica, right off the thruway in upstate New York, and when you came off the thruway, there were 2 gas stations. There was one to the left where they had people there; it was full service; they would pump your gas, and one to the right, which was self-service. And almost a guarantee the self-service is 5 cents cheaper than the one that they would do. And it just always seemed to be the case. And I am really curious if there was a wink, wink, nod, nod. This is just how this works. I've never been more curious until this exact moment.
Interesting.
Because
possibly
I'm really curious myself now. Now, granted, and I'm going to get into it in a second, there are things out there, such as gas stations, where everyone's gas may go up at the same time, but that's market fluctuations, right? Like that's going to happen. There is, when crude oil jumps up one day, you're going to notice the next day that gas has gone up. When, you know, there's a weather issue that causes them to not get as much gas during, you know, for shipments, it's going to go up. You know, there's certain things where
when somebody puts a tariff on,
when hypothetically someone tariffs the crap out of a country
randomly,
or
doesn't, who knows,
or does for one country, but not for 90 days for other countries, or we're not sure. Hypothetically, these are all hypotheticals, and this has nothing to do with real life.
Excuse me for a second while I drink more whiskey.
Yeah.
Yes. I should just. I wasn't planning on drinking, but now I feel like I have to. Interesting.
I refuse to peer pressure anyone into drinking.
Yeah, like I need it. Yes, that's we all know I really need the peer pressure. But anyway, so basically there's a price war for a while, and then Hank Hill, the voice of reason, basically brings all four together to a bar and says, "Would the four of you talk it out and not be idiots?"
Mr. Strickland, forgive me, but shut up. You're acting like a baby. You all are. You're grown businessmen. We're only hurting ourselves with this senseless price war. Why not pool our experience to serve our customers better and stop insulting them by charging less than our product is really worth?
It would be nice to charge enough to at least break even.
Yeah, sure. But then one of you bastards will undercut me.
That's why we have to stop all this backstabbing. Now, if you had quit wasting your energy on this price war and pulled together for a change, imagine what you could accomplish.
Buck, I think your boy might be onto something.
Yeah. When you think about it, I guess we all want the same thing. Thanks, old top. We really owe you. Now, why don't you run out and order some pie and ice cream and such so we can celebrate?
Can do, sir.
So, we all agreed? We all jack up our prices and we keep them there. No backstabbing, no competing, just like Hank said.
Of course, y'all know this is highly illegal. We'd better drink on it.
And he has, whether meant to or not, he has basically created a cartel, because the next thing they do is all agree that they're not going to compete with each other, and if anything, they're just going to keep rising prices. And, you know,
right.
Which is literally the definition of horizontal price fixing. So, to do a very brief overview of antitrust law, essentially, and this goes all the way back into the late 1800s with the Sherman Act. The Sherman Act was passed in 1890 and just broadly prohibits what we'll call anti-competitive agreements and monopolies. Obviously, illegally obtained monopolies are bad for consumers. That was the whole point of this. A few years later, 1914, Clayton Act was formed, Clayton Act was passed, which basically closed some of the loopholes of the Sherman Act because it didn't touch everything. And essentially, and this is how we learned it in law school, is that there's horizontal price fixing and there's vertical price fixing. Horizontal is where essentially competitors agree to either, you know, not go below a certain price, or agree to sort of set the same price, or agree that there's a max cap, whatever the situation is. Vertical price fixing deals with different levels of the supply chain. So like manufacturer and distributor doing some agreements, or a manufacturer and a retailer doing agreements. This is what the issue in King of the Hill is, clearly a horizontal price fixing arrangement. Four competitors basically agree to fix their prices at a certain level. In the United States, this is what we call per se illegal. It does not matter the rationale behind it. The background doesn't matter. The circumstances don't matter. If the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, can show that there was an agreement to fix prices, you're pretty much effed. Like, that is a straight up, you know, you have basically created a cartel, you've reduced competition, you've harmed consumers, so on and so forth. And it's interesting because when the commissioner, not sure who the commissioner is,
right?
But
Commissioner
the commissioner. I'm just going to refer him as the commissioner because apparently he's the commissioner of something.
So I think he might be from the Railroad Commission, which governs oil and gas in Texas. But that was my
interesting. Okay,
my random thought about it.
I mean,
yeah, a weird artifact of
it is just as reasonable as any other potential commissioner, whether it is a FTC commissioner.
Yeah, the show does a good job of not really naming, like, everything is just a little bit off. Arlen, Texas is not a real town, but it sounds like it could be.
For a second, I thought it was the place that Raylan Givens is from in Justified, but I think that's Harlan, Kentucky. But anyway, continue.
They all just sound the same. I mean, that's really
we are going to have to do Justified at some point. I look forward to those episodes.
Okay.
Excellent. And so I did find it really interesting that, like, they threaten, the commissioner threatens Hank with like jail time and a bunch of stuff. It's not far off. I mean, price fixing's no joke. Like, the maximum sentence for individuals found guilty of price fixing is 10 years in jail and $1 million fine. There are executives who have been sentenced to jail time for roles in price fixing. Not many years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, the former president and CEO of Bumblebee Foods was sentenced to 40 months in jail and a $100,000 fine for fixing prices of canned tuna.
Really?
You guys, this did hit the news very briefly, and I only really noticed it because I was still sort of paying attention to antitrust stuff. There was a canned tuna cartel. Like, literally,
interesting.
Stark.
What about the little pouches? You ever see the pouches of tuna? Were they in the
canned
cartel?
tuna, Mike? You are incorrect. It's got to be a can. Pouch tuna is different.
That was Sunkist or whatever the hell.
So, well, here's the thing. So Starkist does have cans.
Starkist.
So Starkist and Bumblebee were both part of the conspiracy. So the Bumblebee ended up paying $25 million fine. Starkist paid a $100 million fine. Like, it's no joke. And so, like, them threatening him with like some type of, jail time or whatever, it's not far off from real life. Like, those are some legitimate threats. And again, I sort of touched upon it before, just market fluctuations, offering matching discounts, that's not price fixing. Like, there's got to be clear evidence of an agreement among competitors. And here, King of the Hill, spot on. Completely illegal activity, totally would be something that the commissioner / the commission would be very interested in preventing and possibly going after him for. The one thing they totally get wrong, other than it being weird with the whole, causing the sound for him to show he's got the wire on, which we'll talk in a second, them talking about creating an ethics committee does not goddamn matter. Like, that does not make any sense. It is horizontal price fixing. I don't care if you have an ethics committee for your cartel. It's not like that would be the moment that the commissioner goes, screw it, I've lost everything. No, that has nothing to do with it. And as I said before, it's because it's per se illegal. Like, it doesn't matter. They either fixed prices or they didn't. It's pretty simple. But they do get the fact right that price fixing is no joke. And fun fact, a couple years after this episode aired, there was propane price fixing. Not in the same way. So, like, it was a little different because in the real propane world, there are like two companies, Blue Rhino and AmeriGas, that have like 80% of the market of like propane tanks. And it turns out they colluded in 2008, so only a few years after this episode came out, to basically tell Walmart, you want to know what? 15 pounds rather than 17 pounds is what the current normal amount of propane gas is. This is like what we've gone to, except they charge them the same price. So they colluded together to basically screw over Walmart and ended up having like a whole thing with the FTC, and they went into a consent decree.
Victimless crime.
Right. It was just Walmart. No one cares. And so apparently they short version, I found it kind of hilarious that there was a propane price fixing thing only a couple years after this episode.
Yeah, that is
it is in no way the same as that, because that's actually more of a vertical price fixing thing rather than a horizontal one, but still kind of funny. So actually, no, it was actually horizontal because two technical competitors, because even though they're in a different part of the supply chain, two competitors did agree to fix it, but it's definitely a little bit of a different situation. So I kind of find that funny.
I did like that they show sort of the impact of the price fixing, where Hank Hill, in his all shucks way, is like, just more time to serve the customer. We're just splitting it up, so we're serving the closer, serving by region. But also, it's like, oh yeah, you're not working on Fridays anymore, and your boss is now going out hunting.
They are making hand over fist on that propane.
How does the agreement to divvy up customers by geographic region play into the antitrust aspect? because cable companies do that.
I mean, I guess they're... Yeah, cable companies are a little bit unique. Utilities are quasi-legal monopolies.
Yeah, there's... I mean... No, it's true. Like, there are... I mean, there's legal monopolies.
Because they own the infrastructure.
Right. Yes. I mean, I guess there's a couple of things about the whole, like, different area thing. One of them is across the street, so I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
But ignoring that, basically you are having an agreement not to compete. You can have those, but when it sort of results in a scenario where that means you are giving a monopoly to someone in that area, that's the problem.
Okay.
Right? Like, you can have non-compete agreements, or although I know at least in years past the FTC wasn't happy about those. That's probably changing for the next few years. We'll see if that actually does have an impact. But, for as long as non-competes are past what the current law is in each state, which normally means they have to can't be terribly restrictive. They got to be for a set period of time. They got to be relatively, like, important to someone's business. So, like, if an employee has a trade secret, they can't just open up, right down the street, a competing business the second they leave. Like, that company does have an interest in saying to them, like, you need a year or two before you start stealing our customers or starting up a new business. But for purposes of the antitrust aspect, by agreeing not to compete with certain customers in certain areas, you are giving them a monopoly in that area, which is anti-competitive. So that's not horizontal price fixing, but it is an anti-competitive action that would still be a problem.
If there was other competition in that area, it would probably alleviate it. But this seems to be, these four sellers are the four sellers in Arlen, Texas, or in the region.
Yep, at least that's what's implied. So yeah. And as part of the whole trying to figure out to uncover the price fixing, Hank Hill wears a wire, sort of.
Commissioner, I swear on my Blue Flame of Valor award, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb. We know you're the brains behind this whole illegal cartel. This month's TPGA newsletter, I am happy to have brought these dealers together in a new spirit of cooperation, said Hill. I ought to pull your hazmat certification right now.
You have to believe me, I never meant to start an illegal cartel. I love propane. I'd never do anything to hurt it.
Well, I guess there is something you could do to convince me. I want you to wear this wire. Get to Heimlich 4 incriminating themselves on tape. Do that, and you walk.
So he wears a wire with the intention of
saving himself from jail.
So I love the scene where, Commissioner Evers shows up at his barbecue. Hank is so flattered at first and wants to serve him dinner, and then is quickly threatened with jail time.
Oh, my gosh. Are you here to give Hank some sort of state propane award?
Well, this is a surprise.
I'm here as part of an ongoing investigation against Strickland Propane, Pine Creek Propane, AA1 Propane, and Thatherton Fuels.
What? What kind of investigation?
It appears your associates, also known as the Heimlich 4, have joined in a criminal conspiracy to engage in price fixing.
Price fixing? That's crazy.
Under an arrangement masterminded by you.
Not to pile on, but the meat's a little overdone.
And Hank is going to wear a wire to expose the antitrust action, or to expose the conspiracy. Texas is a one-party consent state, so he wouldn't have to need any extra permission. He wouldn't have to be a police informant to do this. And Commissioner Evers is not...
Okay, we're going to have to talk about what one-party consent means.
Yeah. So some states are two-party consent and some states are one-party consent. In a two-party consent state, both parties present have to consent to being recorded. So you can't just record a phone call with somebody and then try and blackmail them with it later.
Yes.
Some states, like Texas, are one-party consent. So you can just record a conversation and do whatever you want with it later.
As long as you are a party to the conversation. You can't illegally wiretap someone in Texas.
Correct. So you have to be a party to the conversation. You can't just be the carrier or wiretapping somebody.
And in a two-party consent state, that really means an all-party consent state. That's
Right. That's what I was going to say, because we think of two parties because we think, like, if you're on a phone call, you can record both sides, but all party essentially means everyone who is being recorded needs to know they're being recorded, essentially.
Yep. Which is why sometimes when you're calling some service, they might say this call is being recorded for blank.
Just so you all know, this is being recorded. I want to make sure you both are aware of that.
What? What?
I've been recording Mike all this time and never told him. It's not like this.
I thought this was our private conversation.
An interesting issue. If I don't tell him we're being recorded, but one, there is a icon that shows we're currently being recorded.
Zoom does say it. That, yeah.
Is that just means Mike's an idiot, so we got away with it?
I am illiterate, and that's
we'll scrap that anyway. But yeah, so continue on Hank's trying to do. Well, actually, Hank basically going back on what he agreed to do for the commissioner.
Yeah, so Hank, this is a common theme for him, where like he's trying to do the right thing, but is the right thing following the law, or is the right thing helping out his friend and his boss? In this case, he decides to help out his boss, and they tie all the plots together. They tie most of the plots together. They get the American Chopper guys to circle around, which makes a bunch of noise, which covers up the recording wire. And then he informs Strickland and the other parties to the conspiracy what's going on. And they all come up with a plan that they're going to have an ethics commission, which doesn't, as Derrick said, doesn't really solve the problem. It does get rid of the best piece of evidence that they would have for the price fixing.
Well, and like, even though they said there was an ethics commission, what I think really happened was they just agreed to no longer price fix, because that's basically what happens in the next scene.
Yeah, to no longer price fix, and also probably having the show of like, and we're governing ourselves. It's always better. You see a lot of businesses make this mistake where like better to fix the problem beforehand than to get slapped down by the state afterhand. So Apple's going through this right now in the EU, where they're having some, I don't know if I would call it antitrust, but they're having some regulatory issues, and they really held out as long as they possibly could without making any changes. And then they started making changes, but they're all, too small by half, and they're just kind of, the hammer's about to come down on them pretty hard in the EU.
I mean, you say pretty hard, but these always end up being like, a fraction of a quarter's profits for these companies. So
I don't know, the regulations that are coming down in the EU, where they're like telling them you have to have this feature by this year. It's not nothing. They're making significant changes because of that. I don't know if this is going to be, Apple's still a massive corporation. The risk averse attorney in me would always want my client to get ahead of the issue. Don't get in trouble and get caught for it. You might as well not have the issue to begin with.
Yeah. From attorney's perspective, I think it's always better to ask permission rather than ask forgiveness, which is the reverse of the aphorism, but nonetheless.
But on back to the wire, because we don't know what actual authority Commissioner Evers has, we're just assuming that he's investigating this as a random board member, not as a member of a police task force or something. Because we're assuming Commissioner Evers is just investigating this as a member of some regulatory commission and not as a member of the police. There's no extra authorities there. There are regulations about when the police can record you, but we don't really get into that in this episode. I guess moving on to that, what did you guys think of the episode?
I want Geoff to go first.
I mean, it was amusing, the legal aspects. I didn't find it funny. I'm not a fan of the show. I think I was right from seeing the commercials and going, well, I'm not watching that. It just didn't. I mean, it was a quick watch, so that's good. but we graded on entertainment and on legal. So from an entertainment perspective, I think I have to vote against it. From a legal perspective, I mean, there was a riot. They get that correct. They didn't incite a riot, at least as far as any definition I could find. And I don't think under any definition that would be passable under the First Amendment would that be incitement to a riot. However, their conduct was like clearly not within what was conceived of for the contract. I think even though we don't have the terms, it's safe to say that. On the law, I think I'll give it a pass. I think yay for the law, nay for entertainment value.
Mike, I kind of want you to go next because I think I'm the swing vote on the entertainment, and I think I need you. Okay. I think I need you to impress me.
Okay. I enjoy the show. I enjoy a lot of the just sort of the mellowness of the whole show. It never has great highs, it never has great lows. But also as I'm watching it, there's always like a little joke in there that like I just found out today that it's Tom Petty. I've been watching the show for years. Little things like that where you're watching an episode and like, why do I recognize this voice? Oh, it's Johnny Depp. Or there's sometimes it's a little more obvious where they have like an episode where Snoop Dogg's in there. They just kind of lean into the weirdness of like a Texas small town.
I will say I did get a laugh out of it during the B plot, but yes.
The B plot was not great.
I like how Geoff laughed at the dumb part. Yeah.
I mean, Lucky's a good character, but it's the B plot's not great.
It was him calling Bobby a professor for being in 7th grade and still being in school.
Whoa, you can't leave, baby. No savies. It's the code of the line.
But I can't hold it for 5 days. I have to get going. I got homework to do.
Nuh-uh. You can't go if I can't go.
Hold on, Bobby. Are you still in school?
7th grade.
Then run along, Professor.
What about the code of the line?
The code acknowledges that the children are our future.
That made me laugh, and I got to give it credit for that.
So yeah, I'm going to say I like it for entertainment. Didn't love the legal aspect of it.
So, that's interesting. That's not how I thought we were going. I thought I was going to be only swing vote on the entertainment. Yeah, I'm swing vote on both.
No,
you're the swing vote on both. Interesting.
Yeah.
I have so much power. This is
all right. Proceed, Mr. Kennedy or Justice Kennedy.
Has this ever happened before?
I don't think so.
This is This is a big.
In the 4 episodes we've done like this.
Hey, we're at least 5. Okay. Anyway, well, even if you include sort of what we did previously, like I don't think we ever had a scenario where we were like that sort of waffly on both sides. But
I'm changing my vote now just so he doesn't have to.
You're not allowed. The listener already heard it, and we're going to edit it out. So, on entertainment, I am basing it entirely on just watching this episode, and I have to say no. This episode alone, I was not entertained. So I guess we're sending this back and telling the lower court you screwed that one up on the entertainment. On the legal side, they did better than what I was expecting in the grant. If you had told me they're doing a price fixing thing, I'd kind of be like, no way they get any of this right. They actually got, the general gist right, like what's bad versus what's good. And, no, they didn't incite a riot, but they caused a riot. Come on now. Let's not be technical here. I'm actually going to affirm on the law. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. All so, right. Yeah, affirm on the law barely. Like it's this is barely. Me being, Chief Justice Roberts years ago, where he would do narrow decisions and there would be 5-4 and things like that. Sure. Like it's a very narrow affirmance on a very specific issue.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes,
right. That's it. Wouldn't be a broad sweeping, affirmation. It would be on this one very legal technicality, we fully agree and allow the previous court to have done it. So, yeah. But I will say, I very much enjoyed the price fixing aspects of it. I did not enjoy the show overall. Done.
All right.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa P. LLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2025, all rights reserved.